Welcome to the deep dive. We take your hand-picked sources and really extract the core knowledge and insights tailored just for you.
And today, we're plunging into your materials on something fascinating, the neuroscience of optimal experience. Basically unlocking flow states and resilient perception.
Yeah, it's this really interesting mix, isn't it? How that drive for peak performance, feeling totally absorbed,
Hmm.
how that connects with just how we process the world, especially with, well, everything coming at us
A
today.
constant information flow, yeah. It's a challenge.
Exactly. So we're going to explore the science behind flow, that state that's maybe more than just being in the zone.
Right. And we'll also look at our brain's incredible innate ability to spot patterns, which is, a fundamental skill.
A skill that's really being tested now in this media-saturated age.
Ah.
So our mission is to get a handle on what fuels those peak moments.
And how we can maybe build up some resilience in how we perceive things, how we interpret all that information.
Absolutely. Have you ever been so into something that hours just seem to vanish?
Oh, definitely.
Or, on the flip side, felt completely swamped, just trying to make sense of it all?
Yeah, that too. Those are the two sides we're really digging into.
Okay, so let's start by unpacking this idea of flow. Where did it come from?
Well, the concept really got traction thanks to the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's the one who defined it as this state of deep mental focus, intense engagement,
It's not just casual interest then, it's like total absorption.
complete absorption.
Yeah.
And your sources point out there are specific criteria. It's not just a vague feeling. There's a kind of recipe.
A recipe, I like that. What are the ingredients?
Okay, so key elements. You need clear goals. You have to know exactly what you're trying to do.
Right, makes sense.
Then, immediate feedback is vital. You need to see, how you're doing in real time. Adjustments are possible.
Okay, goals, feedback, what else?
And this is maybe the big one. That balance between how challenging the task is and your own skill level.
Yeah.
It has to stretch you.
But not overwhelm you.
Exactly. Not break you. Too hard, you get anxious. Too easy, you get bored.
Flow lives right in that sweet spot, that zone.
That's it. And when you hit it, the sources describe deep concentration, a real sense of control, and this is interesting, you lose that self-consciousness.
It's like the inner critic just shuts up for a while.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And your sense of time gets completely warped. Hours feel like minutes.
Okay, so what keeps you locked in like that?
It's what Csikszentmihalyi called the autotelic nature of flow. Autotelic means the activity itself is the reward.
Ah, so it's intrinsically motivating. You're doing it for the sake of doing it.
Precisely. Not for some external prize or outcome. The joy is in the process. It's like flow hijacks the brain's reward system to make effort feel good.
Which explains why the results seem so positive. Your sources mention things like boosted creativity, greater life satisfaction.
Increased productivity, even better mental health. It seems like a state really worth pursuing.
Definitely. And that challenge skill balance, you mentioned how it stretches you. That sounds like it promotes learning too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you're operating right at the edge of your capabilities, constantly adjusting based on feedback, you're naturally acquiring new skills, deepening your understanding. It's almost like learning happens automatically within flow.
Growth on autopilot. I like that.
And there's a deeper angle here too, an evolutionary one mentioned in the materials.
Oh. Like, why did we evolve this capacity?
Well, the idea is that flow might be an evolved mechanism that actually encourages us to engage in activities that build our competence and adaptability. Things that ultimately help us survive and thrive.
So our brains essentially reward us for getting better at stuff.
That's the hypothesis. It suggests the drive for flow isn't just about momentary pleasure, it's wired into our development. Understanding it helps us think about learning, work, even therapy.
Okay, fascinating. Let's switch gears slightly to something else our brains are naturally good at. Pattern recognition. What are we talking about here?
At its core, it's just the brain's ability to identify regularities,
Yeah.
similarities, differences, trends, basically making sense of the flood of information we get.
And like flow, this isn't just some neat cognitive trick, right? The sources emphasize its evolutionary roots.
Oh, absolutely vital. Think about our ancestors. Distinguishing edible plants from poisonous ones,
Crucial.
tracking animal signs for hunting, recognizing weather patterns, spotting predator cues or signs of danger. It was constant life or death pattern matching.
Wow. And it's largely automatic, isn't it? We're not consciously thinking, okay, time to scan for patterns.
Exactly. It's running in the background, constantly processing the environment for anything significant. This allows for really rapid responses.
And it's not just identifying what is there, but predicting what might happen next.
That's the key function. Spotting a familiar pattern allows us to anticipate. If I see X and Y, then Z is likely. That's fundamental for making quick strategic decisions.
Which brings us to this idea of a resilient perceptual system. What makes it resilient?
A resilient system, according to your sources, is good at filtering signal from noise. It discerns the patterns that are truly significant and reliable for making adaptive choices and predictions.
But there's a catch in the modern world.
A big one. The sheer volume and, importantly, the artificial nature of patterns in today's information environment pose a real challenge to this ancient system.
Okay, we'll definitely circle back to that challenge. But first, let's connect these ideas, flow and pattern recognition, to the mind-body connection. The sources talk about flow emerging from biological readiness.
Yes, that's a really important perspective. It suggests flow isn't purely psychological. It arises from a state of holistic biological readiness. Your mind and body need to be primed for it.
So actual physiological shifts happen when we're in flow, like changes in brain chemistry.
Definitely. There's a whole cocktail of neurochemicals involved. Dopamine is huge for reward and focus. Norepinephrine ramps up attention and vigilance.
Giving you that alert feeling.
Right. Then you have endorphins, providing that sense of well-being, maybe even euphoria. Anandamide comes in for calm, reducing self-consciousness. And serotonin plays a role in baseline mood stability.
Wow, it really is a cocktail. A natural performance enhancer brewed by the brain.
You could say that. And it's not just chemicals. Brainwave activity changes too.
How so?
We typically see a shift away from the faster beta waves dominant when we're actively thinking, maybe a bit stressed, towards slower alpha and theta waves.
Alpha and theta, what do those signify?
Alpha is linked to relaxed alertness, kind of an inward focus. Theta is associated with deeper relaxation, creativity, maybe even subconscious processing.
So relaxed yet focused.
Exactly. And interestingly, sometimes you see these slower waves combined with bursts of very fast gamma waves, which are tied to high-level thinking and integrating information. It's a unique signature: simultaneous relaxation and hyper-focus.
So if our biology needs to be ready, does that mean our general physical health plays a big role? Diet, sleep, stress?
Absolutely.
Right.
All those factors contribute to what the sources call biological readiness. How well your autonomic nervous system is regulated, your baseline stress levels, your sleep quality, they all set the stage.
The sources mention ancestral lifestyles.
Right, suggesting that things common in ancestral life, regular physical movement, whole foods, engaging manual tasks, might have naturally supported this readiness.
Think about hunting, building, crafting. Those activities engaged the whole system.
Precisely. And conversely, many aspects of modern life, being sedentary, eating lots of processed foods, chronic stress, endless digital pings, can disrupt this balance.
Making flow potentially harder to achieve.
It could. The implication is that consciously cultivating flow might mean consciously nurturing our whole mind-body ecosystem. It's not just a mindset hack.
Okay, let's dive deeper into that neurobiology, the nitty-gritty of what's happening upstairs during flow. We've touched on the chemicals and waves.
Right, it's this complex interplay. Let's unpack that reward and focus cocktail a bit more. Dopamine's role.
Yeah, it seems central.
It really is. Dopamine fuels the brain's reward pathway. In flow, the anticipation, the sense of progress, hitting those mini goals that triggers dopamine release. It feels good, yes, but it also sharpens focus and reinforces the behavior. That's key to the autotelic, intrinsically rewarding nature.
And norepinephrine provides the focus, the alertness.
Exactly. It dials up attention, keeps you vigilant, filters out distractions, like a spotlight for your mind.
Okay, and then endorphins and anandamide, they sound more like the feel-good components.
They contribute significantly to the positive feeling of flow. Endorphins can dampen discomfort, add a touch of euphoria. Anandamide promotes calm, reduces anxiety, and might be linked to that loss of self-consciousness.
And serotonin.
Serotonin is probably more about setting the stage, maintaining a stable baseline mood that makes it easier to enter flow. It's all interconnected.
This neurochemical cascade sounds self-reinforcing almost.
It really can be. It helps sustain the state and makes you want to keep going.
What about those brainwaves again, the alpha and theta dominance?
Right, so the shift to alpha signifies that relaxed alertness, maybe filtering out irrelevant sensory input. Theta suggests deeper immersion, perhaps tapping into more intuitive or creative processing.
And the gamma waves popping up.
That combination of slow alpha theta with fast gamma is fascinating. It suggests the brain is both deeply relaxed and highly efficient at processing complex information, making connections, achieving insights. Calm intensity, as you said.
Yeah. Now, one of the most intriguing parts is what happens to our inner voice, that constant chatter. The sources mention the default mode network, the DMN. What is that exactly?
The DMN is a network of brain areas that lights up when we're not focused on an external task. It's active during mind wandering, thinking about ourselves, remembering the past, planning the future,
Kind of the brain's idle mode, or self-reflection mode.
something like that. It's often linked to that internal narrative, the voice in our head.
And doing flow, this network goes quiet.
That's a key finding highlighted in your materials. DMN activity tends to be suppressed during flow. This is thought to be directly related to the loss of self-consciousness, the altered sense of time, and that intense focus on the present moment. Less self-referential thought, more task immersion.
Okay, that makes sense. There's also this term transient hypofrontality. Sounds complex.
It just means a temporary decrease, hypo in activity, in parts of the frontal lobe, specifically the prefrontal cortex.
The brain's CBO, basically.
Parts of it, yeah. Particularly the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, DLPFC, which handles executive functions like planning, working memory, and critically conscious self-monitoring and judgment.
So the part that worries and analyzes and critiques quiets down temporarily.
That seems to be the idea. This hypofrontality is linked to the feeling of effortless action, reduced self-criticism, and maybe even increased creativity as you're less constrained by rigid thinking.
But the whole prefrontal cortex doesn't shut down, right? You still need goals.
Exactly. It's not a total shutdown. Other areas, like the medial prefrontal cortex involved in motivation, likely remain active. It's more like a reallocation of resources. Less conscious deliberation, more reliance on automatic, well-learned processes, essential for that seamless performance and flow.
Like letting the skilled autopilot take over.
A good analogy, yeah.
Yeah, attention. Your sources frame it as a limited resource, easily drained today. How does flow fit in?
Well, that's what's so remarkable. While normal focused attention can be fatiguing, the attention flow feels, well, effortless and sustainable.
Why the difference?
It goes back to the intrinsic rewards and that neurochemical cocktail. Because the activity feels good and engaging, maintaining focus requires less conscious effort. It's supported by dopamine, norepinephrine.
So it's different from the kind of hyper-alertness you feel when you're anxious, which is exhausting.
Very different. Anxious attention is often scattered, threat-focused, and draining. Flow attention is focused, task-oriented, and sustained by the positive feedback loop within the activity itself. Plus, that DMN suppression minimizes internal distractions, saving attentional energy.
So flow optimizes attention by making it inherently rewarding to pay attention.
Beautifully put. It aligns attention with intrinsic motivation. This ties directly into that theme you highlighted. Attention is a limited resource. How we direct it defines experience. Flow is a powerful example of directing it well.
Absolutely. Okay, so we know what flow is, what's happening neurobiologically. How do we actually cultivate it more? Move from chance encounters to intentional practice.
That's the practical question, isn't it? And the research suggests we can definitely stack the deck in favor of flow by setting up the right conditions, using specific triggers.
Let's break down those triggers. Clear goals were first.
Right. Knowing exactly what you're aiming for focuses attention and provides direction. And for big goals, breaking them down into smaller, achievable sub-goals is key. Gives you those little wins along the way.
Little dopamine hits.
Exactly. Then, immediate feedback.
Knowing how you're doing moment by moment.
Yes. This allows for constant adjustment and refinement. It keeps you engaged and tells you if you're on the right track. The feedback can be built into the task, like hitting the right note on an instrument, or it can be external.
Goals, feedback, and the big one, challenge skill balance.
The crucial sweet spot. The task needs to demand your full attention and push your skills, but not so much that it induces anxiety or frustration. Your sources mention the 4% rule, the idea that the optimal challenge might be about 4% beyond your current skill level.
Just enough stretch to keep you engaged but not overwhelmed. It sounds like Vygotsky's zone of proximal development.
Very similar concept, yes. You're operating right at the edge of competence, which is where learning happens most effectively. And these triggers goals, feedback, challenge skill, they interact dynamically. They create a self-regulating system.
It's interesting how the sources connect this to everyday life and even ancestral activities through embodied flow.
Yeah, this highlights how many traditional human activities were naturally flow-rich.
Yeah.
Think about hunting, crafting tools, weaving, farming, even group rituals or storytelling.
They had clear goals, immediate physical feedback, and required developing skills to meet challenges.
Precisely. And they were deeply embodied, engaging the senses, movement, the whole physical being, not just the abstract mind.
We see echoes today in things like gardening, cooking from scratch, playing music, crafting.
Exactly. Your sources mention foraging, intense focus, pattern recognition, immediate feedback from finding something, gardening to clear goals, constant feedback from the plants, adapting to weather. Alison Velin Kostovic's Grow with the Flow captures that well.
Cooking, crafting, they all have that tangible feedback loop.
They do, and they often quiet that default mode network chatter because you're so engaged with the physical process, the sensory input.
It feels like an antidote to screen fatigue almost, getting out of your head and into your hands.
It can be. These embodied activities seem to nurture that biological readiness we talked about, grounding us in a way that purely cognitive or digital tasks might not. It's meaningful engagement.
The sources also explore flow as potentially therapeutic, a healing current for things like trauma and anxiety. How does that work?
Well, the core characteristics of flow seem to directly counteract symptoms of trauma and anxiety. That intense focus on the present pulls you away from ruminating on the past or worrying about the future,
The diminished self-consciousness helps too, maybe. Less negative self-talk.
likely. And the altered sense of time can provide a break from hypervigilance. Plus, the DMN suppression we keep mentioning directly interrupts those cycles of worry and intrusive thoughts common in anxiety and PTSD.
Are there examples of this being used therapeutically?
Yes, the Ocean Therapy program using surfing for veterans with PTSD is a great example mentioned in your materials. Surfing is incredibly flow-inducing constant feedback, challenge skill balance, physical engagement, and studies show it can reduce PTSD symptoms.
So promoting flow might actively decrease anxiety.
There seems to be an inverse relationship. Engaging in flow fosters a sense of control and agency, which counteracts feelings of helplessness often seen in anxiety. And repeated flow experiences might actually help retrain the brain through neuroplasticity.
Strengthening focus pathways, down-regulating anxiety circuits.
That's the idea. Experience-dependent neuroplasticity in action.
Okay, now here's a curveball from the sources. Boredom. How can boredom possibly relate to flow and creativity? Seems like the opposite.
It's a fascinating paradox. Specifically, boredom that arises from being under-challenged. When you're bored because a task is too simple, your mind starts to wander.
The DMN kicks in.
Exactly. And that mind wandering, that DMN activity, well, maybe not pleasant, can allow for novel connections, daydreaming, subconscious processing, the incubation phase of creativity.
So boredom can spark ideas.
It can. Then, once an interesting idea or a worthwhile challenge emerges, the focused, DMN-suppressed state of flow is perfect for actually developing and executing that idea.
So it's not boredom from overchallenge, which just leads to frustration.
Right. It's the boredom of monotony. It can act as a signal, pushing you to seek a better matched challenge, potentially leading you towards flow. Think of it as part of a dynamic attention cycle.
So maybe we shouldn't fear boredom quite so much. It has a role.
It suggests the value of balancing focused work with periods of unstructured mental downtime, letting the mind wander a bit.
All of this loops back to neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change.
Absolutely. The brain isn't fixed. Every time you enter flow, you're essentially strengthening the neural pathways involved, the attention networks, the circuits that suppress the DMN, the reward pathways, the specific skills you're using.
It's like exercising those brain circuits. Neurons that fire together, wire together.
That's Hebbian learning, precisely. And the positive neurochemical environment and flow dopamine, norepinephrine, maybe growth factors like BDNF, actively supports this synaptic strengthening and new connection formation.
Your sources mention mindful movement and nutrition helping plasticity too.
Yes, exercise is known to boost BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is like fertilizer for neurons. Things like NMN are being researched for neuronal health, while ultra-processed foods might hinder plasticity. It all feeds back into creating a brain more capable of entering and benefiting from flow.
So flow isn't just a state, it's active training for the brain.
Active, positive training. It enhances cognition and resilience, quite the opposite of the negative neuroplastic changes that can happen under chronic stress. This speaks directly to your research theme, rewiring attention through immersive tasks.
Great connection. Okay, we've thoroughly explored flow. Let's shift our focus squarely back to pattern recognition now, and this critical idea of building resilient perception.
Right, so we established pattern recognition as this primal survival skill. Hunting, foraging, safety, it was all about quickly spotting the relevant patterns.
And it's fast, often subconscious, like instantly knowing how many objects are there, subitizing, or reading someone's expression.
Exactly. And the brain evolved for speed and efficiency, good enough for survival. This often meant relying on heuristics, mental shortcuts, and having a bias towards detecting potential threats. Better safe than, sorry, evolutionarily speaking.
But that bias, while useful ancestrally, might trip us up today.
That's the core issue highlighted in your materials. Our modern information environment, especially media narratives, often hijacks this ancient system. Well, think about the news cycle's focus on danger or novelty that taps directly into our threat detection bias, triggering norepinephrine, grabbing our attention.
Okay, I see that.
Or consider algorithmic curation on social media. It learns what keeps you engaged and feeds you more of the same, exploiting confirmation bias, a tendency to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs. It also leverages the availability heuristic, making things seem more common or important just because they're easily recalled or frequently shown.
So our evolved tools for making sense of the world are being used essentially to capture and hold our attention, often for commercial reasons.
That's a fair summary. And the consequences can be significant. Difficulty discerning reliable information from misinformation or disinformation like deepfakes, distorted perceptions of risk or reality, echo chambers that limit exposure to diverse views, eroded trust, even negative mental health impacts from social comparison or constant notifications.
The sources call it narrative conditioning and mention filter bubbles.
Right. We end up living in information silos where certain patterns are constantly reinforced, potentially leading to skewed understanding and even maladaptive emotional responses. Our Stone Age brains are struggling with information age manipulation tactics.
So, given this landscape, how do we build that perceptual resilience? It sounds crucial.
It really is. And it requires moving beyond passive consumption to active critical engagement. A key first step is simply becoming aware of our own cognitive biases.
Like knowing you have confirmation bias or that vivid story stick in your mind more. Availability heuristic.
Exactly. Awareness is the foundation. Then we need practical strategies, cultivating critical thinking, pausing before accepting information, asking who created it and why, actively seeking out different perspectives, especially ones that challenge our own.
Fact-checking basics too, verification practices.
Definitely. Simple things like reverse image searches or cross-referencing claims with multiple reliable sources can make a huge difference. Developing general digital literacy, understanding how algorithms work, recognizing persuasive techniques is also key. Cognitive maturity in the digital age.
And you mentioned mindfulness and even flow earlier as potentially helpful.
Yes. Mindfulness trains us to observe our thoughts and external stimuli without immediate reaction, creating space for more considered judgment. And engaging in flow provides a valuable counterbalance to digital overload, grounding us in reality and potentially recalibrating a nervous system frazzled by constant alerts.
It seems the ultimate goal is what the sources term meta-pattern recognition, recognizing the patterns of influence.
Precisely. It's stepping back and seeing the bigger picture. Recognizing how algorithms shape your feed, how media outlets frame stories, how certain narratives are constructed, and how your own biases are interacting with all of that.
So using our pattern recognition skills on the information environment itself.
Exactly. This meta-awareness allows us to move from being passively conditioned to being active, critical interpreters. It lets us leverage our evolved pattern recognition for genuine understanding and adaptive choices in this complex world.
This has been incredibly illuminating. A real deep dive into flow, perception, and how they intertwine. If we were to boil it down, what are the absolute key takeaways for our listener?
Okay, I think 3 things stand out. First, remember, flow isn't just a mindset. It's rooted in biological readiness. Nurturing your whole mind-body system, maybe drawing on some ancestral wisdom there, really sets the stage.
Right, it's holistic.
Second, the most powerful flow often comes from meaningful, embodied engagement, activities that connect us to the world and ourselves, going beyond superficial gamification. Find things that genuinely absorb you.
Grounded experiences.
Yes. And third, our amazing pattern recognition ability, while a superpower, is vulnerable in the modern info maze. So, consciously cultivating resilient perception, awareness of bias, critical thinking, maybe even meta-pattern recognition is essential for navigating reality effectively.
It really highlights how interconnected these things are. Cultivating flow seems to support resilient perception and vice versa. They both contribute to well-being and adapting well.
Absolutely. They're 2 sides of the same coin, of focused, adaptive engagement with the world. Understanding the principles gives you, the listener, more agency in choosing where to direct your attention and how to interpret what you encounter.
So, a final thought for everyone listening. Maybe consider one area in your life where you could intentionally try to cultivate more flow. What activity could you structure with clear goals, feedback, and that challenge skills sweet spot?
Or, alternatively, take a critical look at the patterns of information you consume daily. What's one small change you could make? Questioning a source, seeking an alternative view, taking a digital break that might improve your perceptual resilience.
Just one small change. That's your food for thought from this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.